Hey TCS viewers, Chris Niccolls here from the camera store, and I'm going to look at the Canon 5D-SR tonight. Now the 5D-SR is an interesting camera. When we first heard about it, actually there wasn't that much excitement. You know, early news and reports on this camera, the dynamic range wasn't going to be improved over the 5D Mark III. In fact, it might even be a little bit worse, and shooting speed's going to be the same, the body's going to be the same, ISO performance is going to be the same. The only real thing changing is double the resolution. But the 5D-SR is, of course, very, very unique because this is the highest megapixel 35mm style camera we've seen so far, and it's now right up there with medium format cameras. So has much changed on the body? Honestly, no. It is very much like a 5D Mark III. I'm going to look at some of the differences, but I've got two goals tonight. First off, I just want to see lenses wise, like, do we really need to have better lenses? Does it make a difference? Canon is even saying that certain lenses they make aren't recommended, so I want to try to test that out. The other thing I want to test out is the resolution, of course. Does that 50 megapixel sensor really live up to what it's promising? Is it giving us medium format quality? I'm going to test that quite a bit now, but as a side note, some folks and I, we were looking out here in this field behind me. There's a moose back there. You can't see it. It's really far away. Longest lens I have is a 50mm. We didn't know what it was, so took a shot, zoomed in. It was definitely a moose. So hopefully that'll be a testament to the camera and a promise of things to come. Now we've got a lot of creeks here. I'm definitely in the mood for some long exposure photography. But I should also mention that this whole video is being shot on the Canon XC10. Now, Levi's not super excited about this because, you know, this camera has some shortcomings. Our initial impressions aren't so good. However, we're giving a good test tonight so you guys can see it at home. And we're going to wrap it up at the end. We're going to talk about the XC10 as well. So you're getting 2 in 1 tonight. Now, we are going to do this video in 2 parts because I don't want to just evaluate photos off the back of the camera. That's just impossible. So just going to take some shots and then we're going to take them home, take a look at the raw files, really play with them and see if there's much difference. But for this particular shot here, you know, Canon's saying the 1635 2.8 isn't a great choice on this camera. They're actually recommending the 1635 f4 LIS. So I'm shooting both here at 20mm and 28, 5.6. I just want to see, are we going to see a big detail difference? Is there going to be any problems? And honestly, folks, I'm really interested in more real world kind of situations, you know, as opposed to scientific. Let's just see if we're really going to have problems. Are you going to have to go sell that expensive 2.8 lens now and trade in for an f4? We'll see. Now, of course, the Zeiss Otis 55, we've talked about this lens before. There's just something that feels so right about putting it in front of a 5D-SR. You know, without the low pass filter, that high resolution, this is the kind of lens that should really be maximizing the potential of this SLR. And I can say, I'm going to look at the photos, but I can say with confidence we are going to see a difference here. We certainly did with the Nikon mount going to the D810. You got to really take advantage of that sensor. And you know, the other thing too, a lot of the times with my photos, when we do these reviews, I really don't edit them. I know photographers like to bring these into Lightroom, they crop them and they change them, contrast, punch them up. But I don't like to do that for the videos. I try to give you guys the photos as I shoot them without big changes because I want you to see the pure image quality, the spirit of the cameras that we review. But one of the huge advantages of this SLR with those megapixels is just the ability to crop heavily. All day today I've been shooting with this Otis and I can crop quite a lot and still get amazing detail. I'm going to show you some examples of that later on, but it really is quite astounding. Now, you know, handling on this camera, well, it's an EOS camera. We've talked about this too, you know, before. Canon, it's such a great system. I mean, they really did design a good body. And they're just not known for really innovating changes in those bodies, but it's okay because, again, it's familiar. I know where all the controls are. It works exactly the same as a 5D Mark III. And I'm doing a lot of live view shooting today so I can really punch in manual focus on the tripod to get the best out of this sensor. But it's easy to use. The back screen is very, very sharp. Camera focuses just the same as a 5D Mark III. Basically the best Canon has to offer in point-to-point focusing. excellent to use, so no complaints, but absolutely nothing really different. Yeah, now the 5DS and the 5DSR aren't really going to be marketed towards the movie industry, the cinematic market, but it's funny because Canon was so famous for such a long time making cinematic SLRs. We still have 720, 60 frames per second as a limitation, no headphone jack. You know, I would have thought with the strong processor in here and the fact that 4K is so prevalent, we might have seen something more exciting, but you're not going to want this for movies. All right, we're starting to lose light, so I've got another test of mine. We got to do it quick here, but I want to test the older Canon 24mm 1.4, not recommended by Canon for the 5DSR, versus the Sigma 24mm 1.4. You know, Sigma's doing a great job, so I've got high hopes for this lens. So we're going to go up the hill here. We've got a beautiful sunset about to happen, super romantic. My fiance's not here, so Levi's going to have to do. Okay, so I've taken my shots with the two 24mm lenses here, and you know, nice beautiful valley. We actually have a couple down there, and zooming in on them just in the camera, I'm actually pretty impressed. I mean, the 5DSR is getting great results with that high resolution with both lenses. Again, we'll take a better look on the computer at home. But you know, one of the things to getting the best results out of these high megapixel cameras, we saw it with the D810 as well, is you need stability and you need good lenses. So stability-wise, Canon's done something very interesting with the 5DSR. We've reinforced the tripod socket. It all feels really, really good. The mirror doesn't slap as hard. And of course, I'm shooting in live view so I can magnify, punch in, and get my manual focus exactly where I want it. But all in all, this camera for landscape work is going to be fantastic. The only issues you are going to find, dynamic range, it's not as good as the 5D Mark III, I don't think, and it certainly isn't any better. There's no improvements there. And low light performance is actually be slightly worse. So as long as you use the 5DSR the way it's intended, on a tripod, doing landscapes, commercial work, and studio stuff, I think you'll find you're going to be very impressed with this. Hand holding this thing all over the place, you're not going to get the benefits of a camera like this. All right, guys, I hear owls. It's getting dark. Levi's shooting the XC10 at 3200 ISO, so it's time to go home. My initial impressions so far using the 5DSR, this is a very technical tool. You're going to need it on a tripod. You need good glass, but the results so far have been pretty good. Now we're going to head home, get some sleep, take a look at these files on the computer, and just see what we really captured today. But, you know, let's just keep in mind, it is a specific camera, and normally I would say the camera doesn't really make the photographs. I mean, it's the photographer who makes the photographs. That's why you guys like Kyle Marquardt's photos better than mine. He's a very talented person. But, you know, a camera like this, it is a bit different. You do need the science. You need the good lenses. You need the tripod. That's the only way to get what's unique about this camera, and that's big print sizes, lots of resolutions. So we'll see you guys soon, and we'll check out those photos. All right, viewers, welcome back. We've had a chance to look at some of the files here on the computer, and we've come to some conclusions. First thing I want to talk about is lens quality. Is it really important to have the right glass? Now, the 5DSR, of course, with no low-pass filter, is a resolution beast, but in order to get the most out of it, you need to have stability and you need to have great glass. We found some interesting conclusions. First thing here, check out the 24mm test, the Sigma 24mm versus the second version of the Canon 24 1.4. Looking at this, the 24 1.4 is not recommended, but honestly, I didn't see much difference between the two lenses. If you look here though at the sharpness on the couple here, fairly similar. The Sigma tends to have more contrast, but resolution looks the same. Now, when we shot the comparison between the 16 to 35 zooms, we did see a difference here. So the 2.8 version, not recommended by Canon, we did notice it's a little bit softer. We're not quite getting that sharpness out of it. You can see a difference. The 16 to 35 f4 LIS definitely did a better job. So is it time to rush out and sell your 1635 2.8? If you're going to handhold the camera, or if you get the 5DS version without the low-pass filter, you're probably going to be okay. But if you're going to shoot on tripod and you want maximum print size, you need to use the recommended lenses. The f4 does do a better job. So, you know, final conclusion, 5DSR, get the good glass to get the best benefit out of it. All right, now here's another interesting test that we did, the Pentax 645Z versus the 5DSR. So first thing I want to talk about is just sharpness resolution. And I'm going to say, honestly, very comparable. The Canon 5DSR can compete with medium format cameras. Now it's a little bit unfair because we did the Otis on the 5DSR and we got even better results out of it. I'd say it's even slightly sharper, and the Pentax just doesn't have an option for that. There are good lenses there, but overall I'd say you're going to get a very comparable print size from medium format. But don't sell your Pentaxes and your Hasselblads yet, because here's the big difference, and it is a big downside for the 5DSR. Dynamic range is not even close to anywhere in comparison to something like the 645Z. We could pull way more detail of the highlights, as you can see here. And shadow detail in the 5DSR was respectable, but you do build up a lot of noise. Dynamic range, honestly, this camera, it's no better than the 5D Mark III or the 6D, really. So we're not getting a big improvement there. Stick to medium format if you're going to really need to push and pull highlights and shadows. Now another little thing here, I wasn't planning on doing this, but last minute had an opportunity to go to the Wings Over Springbank Air Show, and I thought, why not take the 5DSR and give it a try? You know, this camera's not aimed at sports and event photography, but I wanted to see how it could do. I also tried another experiment. Now normally an air show you need long lenses, but I thought I'll just take the 1635 and crop the hell out of it. I was actually pretty impressed. I mean, 5 frames per second, pretty decent. The buffer rate's not great, but you gotta remember these are big files. And as a side note, you want fast cards for these cameras. Slow cards really tend to bog it down, especially in playback. But check out this detail. We can crop heavily on these photos, pick any kind of frame we want, and we're still getting very respectable results. So an interesting experiment. 5DSR is not going to be the camera you want to take for event, photography, or wildlife, but if push comes to shove, it can do in a pinch. All right, so in closing, you know, all in all, I actually did really enjoy using the 5DSR. You got to keep in mind, it is a very specialized tool, and it only performs at its best in very specific situations. Can it compete with medium format? Honestly, I just don't think so. We're not getting the dynamic range. We're not getting the low light performance like the 645Z can do. But if you have a Canon camera and you want high megapixels, I know a lot of users have been asking for that, this camera will deliver. And I know a lot of people are really kind of giving the Canon a hard time because we haven't gotten these improvements. Same body design, no ISO improvement, no low light, no dynamic range improvements. But keep in mind that Canon basically took a 5D Mark III and doubled the megapixels and got away with it very, very well. Get good glass for the 5DSR. You know, try to ignore the fact that it doesn't have a lot of modernized features that they could have put on, like that the 7D Mark II has. But if you're doing landscape, commercial work, studio work, and you're going to stabilize on a tripod, the 5DSR with good glass can deliver amazing results. So thanks so much, guys. We really appreciate it. Now, Levi's going to talk about the XC10 next. And don't forget, if he forgets to mention it, Instagram, subscribe, watch us, Twitter us, talk to us.
Hey guys, it's Levi here. I'm back from retirement and out in front of the camera for my quick rundown on the Canon XC10. So I shot with this for the first time for the episode that you just watched. You're almost done it right after I share my thoughts on this camera with you. So where do I begin? Well, let's start with this long list of things to talk about. First of all is the EVF. It's not really an EVF, more of a lack thereof. You have the choice between this device here that I can put my eye up to, or I can actually take this off, which is sometimes more difficult than you'd like, as shown there, and then you have a screen. So you have to choose which one you want. It's not quick, and it'd be nice to have the best of both worlds. After that, do you see any XLR inputs on here? I don't. I see a 3.5mm mic jack. That's about it. Maybe it's a size thing. It definitely would have been nice to have one on here. Moving on to the lens. So the lens is, to its benefit, actually pretty sharp, and there's very little breathing on it. It's kind of funny what Canon did. They advertised it's a 4K video lens. That just means it resolves 8 megapixels. Not a huge deal, but it is sharp, very little breathing. It's a 24 to 240 equivalent, so it's a pretty wide range. Now, one of the problems is it's no power zoom, and I really wish I had that on the shoot. It seems like that would make sense in a camera like this. It's just not there. It's a 2.8 to 5.6 aperture, the other problem. It really should be a little bit faster than that, 2.8 to 4. You're only getting 2.8 if you're shooting at 24. It's not a focal length I like to shoot at that often. I really like a 35 or a 50. And at those focal lengths, my fastest aperture is like 3.7. It's very difficult to get shallow depth of field. And of course, you're going to run into all sorts of low light problems. Which brings me to another issue I had with the camera, and that's the ND filter. You cannot control the intensity of the ND, so it's either on or it's off. And there was tons of times where my exposure was a little bit in between. I'd either have to, zoom out a little bit wider to allow faster aperture or raise my ISO higher than I'd want to. I really wish the ND had a few more increments of intensity that you could customize. It's something you should see in a camera at this price point. Then we'll talk about the memory format. So this guy has got a CFast card slot and an SD card slot. You can record the video exclusively onto the CFast and the stills exclusively onto the SD card. When I say stills, I say JPEGs because it can't take RAW. Also, another plus of the camera that I liked, it does take LP6 batteries. So for a lot of Canon users, a lot of people are going to be buying this camera, probably really like Canon's products. They'll probably have spare batteries ready to go. The battery life was fairly impressive. So I know I'm going through the features of this camera really quickly, and I'm not praising it. I'm kind of crapping on some aspects of the camera. But that brings us to the great redeemer, average video quality. It's not too bad. I mean, it's got pretty good dynamic range at base ISO. It has C-Log. C-Log's very nice. There's a lot of LUTs available for it. It's a great log profile, but honestly, we expected that to be in there. When you shoot at higher ISOs, the image really softens up. Not a ton of noise, but it softens up quite a bit. I would say it wasn't as bad as I actually expected, though, so there's a win for Canon. So I've given you a lot of opinions really quickly, and I only have one question for Canon. With this grip, where do my two fingers go? Where exactly do they go? And if this is Canon saying, hey, this is the future, well, then the future is just as dire as every science fiction novel ever predicted. It's not looking good, folks. Anyways, that's my rundown of the Canon XC10. I've been told I have to say follow us on Instagram and Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Keep watching. It's only going to go up from here.